Okay, here we go. I think he's finally done it. I think he's finally broken me. For the past 3 days, Holden has been a ghost in our apartment. A 6'2" poltergeist who still eats my food and uses my shower, but refuses to acknowledge my existence with anything more than a monosyllabic grunt. It's the silence. God, the silence is the worst part. It's not just an absence of noise, it's a physical presence heavy and thick like humidity before a storm. It fills up every room, seeping into the cracks in the floorboards until I feel like I'm suffocating under its weight. The sound of his fork scraping against a plate is an explosion. The whisper of his socked feet on the hardwood floor is a taunt. I talk, and the sound just dies in the space between us. This morning, I tried again. I made his favorite coffee, the expensive kind he loves, and placed it on the counter. Holden, can we please just talk about this? I asked, my voice already trembling with the effort of staying calm. He picked up the mug, took a long sip while staring at the wall behind me, and then walked out of the room as if I hadn't spoken. As if I was just part of the furniture. It's a punishment, I know it is. It's his go-to move. He builds this wall of silence, brick by agonizing brick, until I'm the one screaming and crying and begging just to feel something anything other than this suffocating emptiness. I become the hysterical one, the crazy one, while he gets to stand there calm and composed in his silent judgment, the righteous martyr. My best friend, Serafina, says it's a classic form of emotional abuse. A control tactic. I texted her a novel-length rant last night and she called me back instantly. Nix, that's not just him being quiet, she said, her voice sharp with indignation on my behalf. That's a weapon, he's using silence to control you. And I know she's right, I know it. But when the silence stretches into its third day and the loneliness starts to feel like a physical weight on my chest, all I can think is, what did I do to deserve this? What could possibly be so bad that it warrants being treated like I'm not even here? It started as these things often do over coffee. Last Tuesday, Serafina and I were nestled in our usual corner booth at the Daily Grind, the air thick with the scent of roasted beans and her simmering discontent. She was in the middle of a dramatic retelling of her latest fight with her boyfriend, Dylan. Apparently, he'd had the audacity to buy the wrong brand of almond milk. And then Nix, he looks at me with this completely blank face and says, I don't see what the big deal is. Can you believe that? It's not about the damn milk. It's about the fact that he never listens, that he doesn't care enough to remember the little things that matter to me. She slumped back, her sigh a masterpiece of theatrical despair. It's like he's incapable of basic consideration. I swear I'm living with a rock. As I listened, a strange feeling began to curdle in my stomach. It was a familiar cocktail of sympathy mixed with a sour, unspoken competitiveness. Her relationship drama was always so cinematic, so full of clear villains and righteous victims. My own relationship with Holden, in contrast, felt frustratingly mundane. We had our disagreements, sure, but they were usually quiet, unresolved tensions that just sort of faded away. There were no grand betrayals, no screaming matches, just a low-grade, simmering dissatisfaction. It wasn't a good enough story, and in that moment I wanted a better story. I wanted her outrage, her validation. I wanted to be the one on the receiving end of that fierce, protective loyalty she was so good at dispensing. So I took the tiny, insignificant argument Holden and I had the night before and began to embellish. It had been about something stupid. I'd forgotten to pay the internet bill on time. He'd been tired from a long day at his logistics firm and had just said, Can you please try to remember next time, Nix? I need the connection for work. He'd frowned, more at the inconvenience than at me. But that's not the story I told Serafina. You think that's bad? I began, leaning in, my voice hushed with manufactured pain. Holden has turned silence into an art form. Last night I made a tiny mistake with a bill and he just shut down. He didn't yell, it was worse. He gave me this look, Sierra, this look of pure, cold disappointment. Like I was this massive burden he was forced to carry. I saw her eyes widen and I knew I had her. I kept going, the words flowing with an unnerving ease. He didn't speak to me for the rest of the night, just sat there staring at his laptop, the whole room feeling like an icebox. It's like he wants me to feel small. He wants me to grovel and apologize for just existing. It was a lie, a gross exaggeration. He'd been quiet because he was exhausted and had to prep for an early morning meeting. He'd even kissed my forehead before he went asleep. But as I watched Serafina's face morph from sympathetic to furious, a disgusting thrill shot through me. Her hand reached across the table and squeezed mine. Oh, Nix, she breathed, her eyes blazing. That's not just being quiet, that's psychological warfare. I soaked it in, the warmth of her anger on my behalf. For the first time all day, I felt seen. I felt important. I was no longer just a girl with a boring, vaguely unsatisfying boyfriend. I was a victim, a survivor. And it felt intoxicating. That one conversation was like a spark on dry tinder. My performance had been so successful that I started to believe it myself. Over the next week, every minor annoyance became a piece of evidence in the case I was building against Holden. Him working late wasn't a sign of his ambition. It was a deliberate tactic to avoid me. Him forgetting to take out the trash wasn't a simple oversight, it was a passive-aggressive statement about my worth. Serafina, now fully invested in my melodrama, became my co-prosecutor. Every text I sent her, detailing some new perceived slight, was met with a barrage of angry emojis and validating fury. He sighed when you asked him to help with the dishes, the absolute nerve. He's going out with his work friends again, he's isolating you, Nix, it's a classic move. She fed my narrative and I feasted on it. We were no longer just friends catching up, we were strategists in a war room, planning my liberation from a silent tyrant. The actual flesh and blood Holden, the man who still made me tea every morning and left silly notes on the fridge, became a ghost, replaced by the monstrous caricature I had created. The tipping point came during a wine-fueled Friday night at my place. Serafina was on a roll, pacing my living room like a lawyer giving a closing argument. "You can't just let him get away with it, Nix," she declared, pointing a finger at me for emphasis. "This passive-aggressive nonsense is worse than yelling, it's insidious. It rots a relationship from the inside out. You have to show him that you won't be his emotional punching bag anymore." "But how?" I asked, my voice a perfect imitation of a damsel in distress. "Anything I say, he'll just twist it or meet it with that wall of silence." Serafina's eyes lit up with a dangerous glint. "Then you have to stop playing his game. You have to change the rules, you have to make a statement, something public, something he can't ignore." She paused, a slow, wicked smile spreading across her face. "You have to humiliate him. Just a little fight fire with fire." And that's when the plan was born. The idea in its grotesque brilliance was mostly hers. There was a small get-together planned at our apartment for the following weekend, just a few of our mutual friends. "It's the perfect stage," she whispered, her voice conspiratorial. "Right when everyone's relaxed, you give him a gift, a little something to help him." She pulled up her phone and after a few seconds of furious typing, showed me the screen. It was a book cover, The Art of Empathetic Communication, a guide for the emotionally stunted man. "You wrap it up nicely," she explained, her excitement palpable, "and then you give it to him. In front of everyone, you say something sweet, something that sounds like you're trying to be helpful. He'll be so mortified, so completely caught off guard, that he'll have to finally confront what he's been doing to you." A sane person would have recognized the sheer insanity of this plan. A person in a healthy friendship would have had a friend who'd advise against it. But I wasn't sane, and our friendship had become a toxic echo chamber. I was no longer Nix, Holden's girlfriend. I was the protagonist in Serafina's drama, and I was about to play my part. I clicked by now, the party was perfect. Almost too perfect. The living room was filled with the low hum of conversation and easy laughter. Soft music played from the speakers Holden had spent an entire afternoon setting up, and the string lights he'd insisted on hanging cast a warm, golden glow over everything. He was in his element, moving through the room with a quiet confidence, refilling drinks, making sure everyone felt welcome. He'd even made his famous 7-layer dip, which was, as always, a massive hit. Watching him, a pang of something uncomfortable, something that felt dangerously like guilt, twisted in my gut. He wasn't the cold, calculating monster from my stories. He was just Holden, my Holden. I pushed the feeling down, clutching the gift-wrapped book hidden behind a cushion on the sofa. Serafina caught my eye from across the room and gave me a sharp, encouraging nod. The stage was set, it was time for the star of the show to make her entrance. I waited for a lull in the conversation, my heart hammering against my ribs. I picked up the neatly wrapped package, the cheerful paper belying its malicious contents. "Hey everyone," I called out, my voice a little too loud, a little too bright. The chatter died down as all eyes turned to me. Holden looked over from the kitchen, a relaxed, happy smile on his face. That smile almost made me stop, almost. "I just wanted to take a moment to give my amazing boyfriend a little gift," I said, walking towards the center of the room. I could feel Serafina's gaze on me, a spotlight urging me on. I held the book out to Holden. "Honey, this is for you." He looked confused but pleased. "Nix, you didn't have to get me anything." "Oh, but I did," I purred, my voice dripping with a sweetness that felt acidic on my own tongue. "I just hope it helps you learn to use your words. You know, to communicate." instead of just punishing me with silence every time you feel a little bit grumpy. I figured you might as well read the manual, since speaking like a normal human being seems to be such a struggle for you. The words hung in the air, instantly sucking all the warmth and laughter out of the room. The silence that followed was different from Holden's. It was a horrified, collective intake of breath. Our friends stared, their faces a mixture of shock and embarrassment. They looked at me, then at Holden, then at the floor. Holden's smile didn't just vanish. It was wiped clean from his face, leaving behind an expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't anger, it was nothing, a complete and utter void. The warmth in his eyes was extinguished, replaced by a chilling stillness. He looked at the book in my hand, then up at my face, and in that moment I saw the exact second he stopped loving me. It was like watching a light switch being flicked off. He didn't take the book, he didn't raise his voice. He just stood there for a beat, the entire party frozen around him. Then he looked at me, his voice low and impossibly steady, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Nix," he said, and the name sounded alien coming from his lips. "We're done." And then he turned and walked out of the room. He didn't slam the door. He just opened it, stepped through, and closed it quietly behind him, leaving me standing alone in the wreckage I had so carefully, so stupidly created. The quiet click of the front door closing was the loudest sound I had ever heard. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The party was over. Our friends, who moments before were laughing and drinking, now looked like statues in a museum of social disasters. They avoided my eyes, their gazes darting everywhere but at me. The air was thick with a collective cringe. One by one, they started to leave. The goodbyes were brief, mumbled affairs. "Hey, I should get going. It's getting late. Thanks for having us." Each departure was a small nail in the coffin of my evening of my life. No one hugged me. No one offered a word of comfort. They just wanted to escape the blast radius of my self-destruction. Serafina was the last to leave. She tried to play the part of the triumphant co-conspirator. "Well, you certainly made your point," she said, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. She gave my shoulder an awkward pat. "He'll come crawling back once he realizes you're not a doormat. You'll see," but even she couldn't meet my gaze for long. She was more interested in analyzing the drama than in dealing with the real, messy fallout. Her support felt hollow, like a cheap prop from a play that had ended disastrously. Once she was gone, I was left alone in the silence. The real silence. Not the manufactured, weaponized silence of my stories, but the profound, echoing emptiness of a home that is no longer a home. The half-eaten dip, the abandoned drinks, the cheerful string lights, they all felt like a mockery. The first wave of panic hit me then. I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling as I tried to call him. It rang once, then went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail, I sent a text. "Holden, that was a stupid joke. I'm sorry, please come back." The message delivered, but there was no reply. I tried WhatsApp, one gray checkmark. He had blocked me, Facebook Messenger. The message wouldn't even go through. He had cut me off, completely. I spent the next hour in a frantic cycle of denial and rage, pacing the apartment. I drafted and deleted a dozen more messages. I called our mutual friends, my voice high and strained, trying to sound casual. "Hey, have you heard from Holden?" The responses were uniformly awkward and evasive. "No, sorry, Nix. I think he just wants some space, you know? Listen, we really don't want to get in the middle of this." They were closing ranks, his ranks. The bravado I'd felt, the righteous indignation that had been my fuel for weeks, had completely evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, creeping dread. The story I had so carefully constructed, with myself as the noble victim, was crumbling around me, and I was beginning to suspect that I had gotten the characters all wrong. A week passed. A week of sleeping on Holden's side of the bed just to smell his fading scent on the pillow. A week of my phone remaining stubbornly silent. The silence I had once railed against was now the only thing I had, and it was a torment. My desperate attempts to reach him were met with a digital wall. I was a ghost in his life now, and the irony was a bitter pill. In a fit of desperation, I remembered the iPad we shared, the one that mostly sat on the coffee table collecting dust. My hands shook as I turned it on, hoping to find some clue, some forgotten open chat window, anything. I didn't know what I was looking for. Proof that he was miserable without me, maybe. His email was logged in. I felt a surge of shame, but I pushed it aside and clicked. There was nothing there, just work emails and spam. Then I saw the Notes app. My heart lurched. There was a folder simply titled Us. I clicked it. It wasn't a diary. It was a series of unsent drafts, memos to himself, fragmented thoughts typed out late at night. The most recent one was dated the day before the party. "Need to talk to Nix, really talk. The silence thing isn't working. I know it hurts her. I can see it in her eyes. It's not that I want to punish her. God, no, I freeze. She comes at me and my brain just shuts down. All I can think is don't say the wrong thing, don't make it worse. And I end up saying nothing at all, which is the worst thing. It's what my dad used to do, that cold, silent disapproval. I swore I'd never be that guy, and here I am. I had to stop reading to catch my breath, a sob catching in my throat. I scrolled down to an older note from a month ago, booked the tickets. She's going to lose her mind when she finds out. A week in that little coastal town she's always talking about, the one with the old bookstore. For our anniversary, I have to get better at this. At talking, at showing her. I feel like I'm failing her lately. Maybe this trip will help, maybe we can finally fix this. And then the final crushing blow. A link to a website, a local therapist specializing in couples counseling. He had an appointment booked for the two of us. It was for the Monday after the party. The iPad slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the floor. The screen didn't crack, but I felt like I had shattered into a million pieces. It was all there. His struggle, his fear, his love. His plans. He wasn't the villain. He wasn't a cold, calculating abuser deploying strategic silence. He was just a man, flawed and scared and trying. He was trying so hard in his own quiet, clumsy way, and I hadn't seen it. I hadn't wanted to see it. It didn't fit my story. So I had taken his quiet plea for help and turned it into a public execution. I saw Serafina again yesterday. We met at the same coffee shop, sat in the same corner booth. It felt like visiting a crime scene. She was already buzzing about some new drama with Dylan, something about him being friends with his ex on Instagram. She expected me to jump in to offer my own tale of woe as tribute. So, any word from the Ice King? She asked, stirring her latte with a clatter. I just shook my head, the words lodged in my throat. I couldn't tell her what I'd found. I couldn't admit that our righteous crusade had been built on a foundation of my own lies. Admitting that would mean admitting what I had truly become. You know what? Good riddance, I heard myself say, the voice sounding hollow and distant. He was dragging me down. I'm better off. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. Serafina nodded, satisfied. She had her villain, her friend was the triumphant survivor, and the story had a neat, tidy ending. She quickly moved on, the conversation shifting back to her own life, her own problems. I was no longer the main character. My story was over. Later that night, I came home to the apartment. It's not ours anymore, it's just mine, and it's too big, too quiet. I walked into the bedroom and saw them tucked away in the corner by the closet door. The old, worn-out running shoes Holden had been meaning to throw away for months. He'd forgotten them. I sank to the floor, pulling the shoes into my lap. They still smelled faintly of him. And that's when the performance finally ended. There was no audience, no one to impress, no one to win over. There was just me, the quiet apartment, and the devastating, irreversible truth. I started to cry, not the performative, self-pitying tears I had shed for Serafina, but ragged, ugly sobs that tore their way up from a place deep inside me I didn't know existed. I had complained about his silence, but now its totality was my punishment. I had craved a stage, an audience, a dramatic role to play. I got my wish. I stood in the spotlight, delivered my big show-stopping line, and received a moment of shocked silence. But when the lights came up, I realized I had been performing in an empty theater. I had burned down the whole stage just to win the applause of a single person in the crowd, a person who had already turned away, looking for a better show. And in the process, I had destroyed the only real and beautiful thing I ever had.